Hello and welcome to the second episode of Working Online from Home. So this episode, I'm going to be covering things like appearance and the way that we present ourselves. I'm going to be covering about some of the tools. We talked last time about Zoom. We're going to go a bit deeper into breakout rooms, and we're going to talk about leadership and hierarchy in this new online world. So the first thing that you might notice around appearance is that I'm kind of not really dressed in what you might consider work outfit. I'm also in a sort of cluttered room. You've got a strange angle coming at me here. And I've got kind of like all stuff cluttered, all things going on. And it's not the best business presentation. So whilst avoiding the trap of presenting a fake or unauthentic professional mask, what we do want to do is we want to fit into the culture or start creating the culture and how you want to be seen. So if you wear t-shirts and you wear things like that to work, fine, absolutely fine. But if you don't, if the culture is shirts and things like that at work, just bear that in mind. Be aware that whilst at the moment we've been forced into this online space, your work life has been brought into your living room, that we want to, people do have these judgments, and often, all we've got to see is this little square window into your reality. So just be aware of how you are presenting yourself and what message you're giving across. And whilst there's a little bit of tolerance now, that might well wear out, and we want to kind of keep that professionalism of whatever that means to you. So I'm certainly not putting any preconditions about what professionalism is in terms of your context, but just have a think about that, be aware. So I'm going to do a little bit of a change now, and then we'll carry on with the second and third parts of this mini talk. So I'm back. I've changed. I've put on my nice work shirt. I've reframed myself. I've moved my monitor up by balancing it on some boxes so that my webcam is on an equal eye line, which means that now I can meet you as we are equals. And this is a much better position than looking up at my nostrils or looking down upon me from above so that I have to peer up. It doesn't take too much to fiddle out where your webcam is and just position things around. So you've got a nice frame so that when you're standing there, if you imagine that you're almost like a TV presenter, how would they be balanced in the frame so that you've got the best chance of meeting people where they are and creating that good environment? So we'll move on to having a look at some of the tooling. So I'm recording this on Zoom, which is my video conferencing tool of choice. At AWA, we use Zoom for pretty much everything. We've been using Zoom for our own internal conferences, our own chats, meetings, and also now we've been using it for all of our online training classes. We've been using Zoom for online coaching. So we do one-to-one coaching, team coaching, leadership coaching. We've been using Zoom for years for that, and now moving some of those things, some of the things that we've learned into the online classes. So we talked a little bit about all of the Zoom controls and some of the preferences in the system's preferences in the last chat. But what we did is we deferred some of the talk around the breakout rooms until this talk. So breakout rooms are a fantastic feature of Zoom. They allow, when you've got multiple participants, to put them into their own private chat rooms so that they can talk about stuff and then come back to the main room. So this is really essential when you've got a large number of people on the call, because that in-class or large meeting space is very hard to get people chatting around to create a big group discussion online. So what we can do is we can break people into groups, have those discussions, summarize some of those elements, and then come back into the main room and then just play the summaries back from each group rather than everybody contributing. So as we discussed last time, to access the breakout rooms functionality in Zoom, you need to go into the settings and enable it. So if you're wondering how to do that, check out the first video, and that will give you the breakout rooms icon in the bottom of your screen. When you click that, you get the chance to create the rooms and then move people into those rooms. One of the things which is often missed is the little options button down the bottom. When you click on options, you get this screen coming up, this little set of features that you can enable. So I always check this, move all participants into breakout rooms automatically, because often the notice to come up in breakout rooms, sometimes when you've got a lot of people, it doesn't always appear. And then the attendee has to then click into manage participants and then select their room and then go into the breakout room, which if they're not used to using Zoom can be a bit of a faff. And then often people get left behind wondering why they aren't in a room and things like that. So this just solves that problem, because people will automatically be moved into the breakout rooms you've assigned them. I always have this allow participants to return to the main breakout session at any time. That's a default checked. And that allows people, if they get stuck or they run out of things to say or something's gone wrong technically, because Zoom isn't perfect, then they can always come back. You can talk to the person in the main area, and then you can send them back or allocate them a different room or whatever is the solution. This breakout rooms automatically close after 30 minutes is not checked by default, but this is a really good thing to check. And I normally check this and then change the time for how long they're in the room. Now, the reason why we do that is because this is the way to get a timer up in the breakout room. So you see this little screen down here, it says remaining, in this case, 12 minutes and 7 seconds. This only appears for the participants in the breakout rooms if you check this box. And this is great because not only do they have the timer ticking down that tells them how long they've got, which means they can manage the time in their breakout rooms accordingly. That's one of the biggest things that people lose when they're in the breakout room. Oh, how long have we got? How long? What are we supposed to be talking about? What are we supposed to be doing? Oh, we're in a room with no facilitator. What should we do? Well, that takes out one of those problems around timing. And the other thing we talked about last time was broadcasting. So we can broadcast into all the rooms at once with messages, with instructions. We can still use the chat. We can use Slack. We can use other forms to communicate with the people in the breakout rooms to make sure that they know what they're doing and how long they've got. And then the countdown after breakout closing, this happens when the timer runs out, when the people have finished in their breakout room, or when you bring them back automatically. Then they will remain in that room for a period of 30 seconds in this case, and you can change that number before coming back. It allows a little bit of breathing space so that if someone's halfway through a sentence when you want to bring them back in the main room, they don't just suddenly get cut off. They get 30 seconds with a warning that comes up, which allows people a little bit of time just to quickly finish off what they were saying before they're brought back. So this is well worth examining this options box and just using this as part of the setup before you send people off to their rooms. So the next thing I'd like to show you is this is what it looks like for the host. So once you set up the breakout rooms, you've put people in their breakout rooms, they've gone off, then you get this panel. And this means that you can move people around, you can exchange people, and you can rename the rooms. So renaming rooms is good if you're doing, say, an open space and you wanted a particular topic for a room, or if you're doing coaching or you're doing different things where the people who are in that room are in there for a reason, as opposed to a different room, which has got a different reason, then you can rename the rooms. And then the room name will appear in that breakout space, so that that'll appear at the top of the bar of their window. And this is an example of me renaming some of the rooms to arbitrary names. So the reason why this is important is because it means that you can also drop into rooms, you can move people around. Now, what we've done, been experimenting with, which works really nicely in something like an open space, is giving the attendees a co-host rights. So there's host, which can control everything, and then co-host, which can control almost everything. Now, the difference between host and co-host is that when you've got breakout rooms, as a host, you can see all of these things. You can rename rooms, you can move people around, you can exchange people, and do all this stuff. You can drop into any room you want. You can come out of any room you want and go into a different room. You have full access to do whatever you want. Now, a co-host has the ability to go into a single room, and then from that room, move to any other room. And then when they leave, they come back to the main room and then can only go from the main room to the room they left. So what we do is we create a blank room called a corridor or spare room or breakout room or whatever you want to call it, so that co-hosts can go into the room of their choice. They can spend the time there doing whatever is needed. And when they want to leave, they go to the breakout room or the corridor room and then back to the main space. And then when they go back, if they want to then join another room, they can then leave the main space, come back to the corridor and choose whatever room they want to go into without having to go back into the room that they just left, which means that they'll then see the people in there and then have to leave again. It's much cleaner to have like a corridor or breakout room or some spare room which people can jump around in. And if you give them the co-host, it means that then you've got self-organization capability built in. So if you don't do that and they're just an attendee, then you as the host has to manage and physically move people about from one room to another as they ask you to, either through chat or through some other medium. Or they have to always come back to the main room, ask you, and then you move them about again. Self-organization is much easier if you give them all co-host, and then they can move about wherever they want and self-organize into different groups. So that's a really key piece of functionality there. Okay. So the next piece of functionality I'd like to show you is very, very basic. Most likely you've already discovered this, but I thought it's probably worth saying this, is that there is a gallery view. Now, everyone has this, every attendee has this, and I encourage people to use the gallery view when we have a lot of people. So the two views in Zoom are the speaker is present, so whoever's speaking, the screen, the attention will go to them, and you'll get the big window with that person's face in it. If you put it on gallery view, then just like here, you have a green border around the person speaking. That green border will move around and you can see everyone. This is much better for creating that feeling of safety in the room. Everybody is equal, everyone can see each other, and it makes a much better feeling that you're one of these people, one of the group. And I find that's a great way to enhance safety. So one of the big problems with having the gallery view is that when somebody does a screen share, of course, you lose the gallery view. And this is a big problem because then you can't see the people, especially if you're the person sharing the screen, because now you can't see everyone and it doesn't feel safe again. So in order to create this kind of safety, we can, for example here, I'm sharing the screen, and you can, if you go full screen, it gives you the option to pop out the gallery view. And so with the gallery view, you can pop this out. If you have two monitors, you can move it to the other monitor. So you have to go full screen. Full screen, see the gallery view, and then you've got both of the best of both worlds. You've got the full screen that you can see the sharing and you can see everybody's face. And then when you go down from full view again, the gallery window will automatically pop back in to your main frame. So that's just something that's fairly useful there for large group and screen sharing. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about on this particular session is around leadership, hierarchy, and the new online world. So in our offices, when we're in the building, there are loads of different things that mark a hierarchy in the organization, often where people sit, what they wear, how they carry themselves, what offices they have, all these kind of things. Now, I've been in offices where there's actually parts of the building where you can't even get to, because the CXOs, the CEOs, that's where their offices are, and no one can even enter that part of the building. So this is a clear marcation of hierarchy. It's like these people are allowed here, these people aren't, all these kind of things. Now, when we enter the online world, this is a leveler. So we haven't got those physical attributes anymore. And this can be a good and a bad thing, as with all of these things. So let's examine some of the bad things first. So one of the things is that this sense of hierarchy and culture is often built in very strongly to the organizations where we sit. And leadership, as in the higher up management, often have this sense of authority based around these elements. And for our organizations, mostly our organizational structure is around communication, collaboration, it's around flow of information, and also consistency at scope of problems. All of these kind of things is dealt with at each individual part of the hierarchy. And so once those things have gone, and those key markers, physical markers have gone, then it throws into a whole different light when people start looking at themselves. And how can I now mark myself as this personal authority in this scope? What does that mean for me? What kind of status does that reflect? And it can give people a bit of anxiety around how do I maintain my position when I do need to maintain that position to keep it all together. And so this can be quite an anxious time for leadership. And my advice to you at that level, and this is what we coach and we help, is to really look around what value it is that you are adding. Because clearly there is a lot of value. There's a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge at that level. There's a lot of knowledge, not only within yourself, but also within what's going on in all the different groups. And figuring out how you can really add that value now in a way which is not based around the status of who you are, but around what value you can add. And often I look at this from a customer perspective. How do we cohese all of these big elements together to make a better flow, a better reactive and proactive company to deal with all the changes that are going on? Now, clearly there's a lot of value at that leadership level. And we just need to make sure that that's brought out and made clear, and perhaps use some of the tools, get familiar with those tools, because a lot of the people who are in different areas or different parts of the hierarchy are probably going to be a lot more knowledgeable about these tools than you are. So really getting to grips with these tools and using them to their maximum ability so that you can communicate in a way so you don't have to have so many meetings online, and using the different tooling to enable you to have better meetings, more effective meetings, so that it doesn't completely wear you out and you end up spending 12, 14, 16 hours a day in front of this little box. So using that tooling as well. Now, from a good perspective around the hierarchy, so the bad perspective of summary is that we've got a lot to learn, we've got a lot to show, we've got a lot to bring out, but when we do, we could be a lot more powerful and a lot more effective in this space. So from a good side, what we're looking at is to really start to understand what hierarchy is. Now, often in the agile world, we've talked about flattening of the hierarchy and what that actually means. Well, it never meant flattening of the layers in the organization so that we're all on the same kind of like scope of decision making. That was never what was intended. Flattening of the hierarchy is an internal hierarchy. It's flattening of the status-based hierarchy, which says, I'm better than you, I earn more than you, I'm higher up in the organization and therefore somehow superior. Now, I remember some contracts that I've had in the past when I was working for organizations, not working for AWA. I've actually had in those contracts, your direct superior is, or these people reporting to you, you are their superior. And those kind of terminology in that kind of status-based world, it doesn't belong in, doesn't enable us to solve the types of problems which we're facing today. What we need is a much flatter status-based hierarchy. And this online medium is a really good way to get rid of some of those markers, some of those physical markers which create this superiority, and instead look at what value we're adding so that we can all bring the right value and that we can solve the problems effectively and flatten the internal status-based hierarchy, which is such a divider, such a them and us. And getting rid of that them and us is what's needed, is what collaboration is, right? How are we going to collaborate with them over there? What we want to do is want to say it's us here. And this is a fantastic way to recreate that culture in your organizations based around an equal status-based hierarchy, but not necessarily a scope-based hierarchy where different people look at different levels and different scope of problem. Some people are detail focused, some people are broad, big picture thinkers. All of those things are needed. We still need someone to look at the whole organization, to look at the whole system. At the same time, we still need people to look at specific individual product issues or specific bugs or fixes in software or very low level detail. All of those things are needed. And that does form a sort of scope-based hierarchy, but it's not a status-based hierarchy. And this online medium, hopefully, can help us progress out of these old systems of thinking into a new flattened status-based hierarchy. And certainly learning the tooling and learning more effective ways to communicate and help people collaborate and feel safe online is the way to go. So that's all we've got time for on this particular facilitation and online guide. So I will be creating more, and especially I'm going to start writing articles and things specifically around safety and culture online, because these are the things which are under threat or we're worried about, or how do we create that kind of collaboration, especially en masse. So we'll be looking at some of those things coming up So I hope this has been useful, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.